Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host, Maqbool, with you at BTV World. In today's show, we're going to be taking a look at two top stories. The first is in reference to Pakistan and Saudi Arabia's defense cooperation. We know the Prime Minister is in Jeddah on a 4-day official visit. And this, of course, includes a meeting with the top leadership of the country and, of course, trade and investment relationships, among others. And, of course, the areas in which we're going to collaborate and have been doing so in the past also include a bolstering of defense cooperation amid, of course, the regional security situation. This is very, very relevant to Pakistan's current situation, given its fight against terrorism and, of course, the threats emanating from Afghanistan and the opportunities that exist in terms of collaborating on this front, and what sort of support and assistance can countries like Saudi Arabia provide to Pakistan in this hour of need. And then, of course, in terms of what sort of tangible actions can be taken with regards to the terror financing networks in the region, as well as, of course, the safe havens that are being supported by the Afghan Taliban regime. So we're going to take a closer look at what that means in terms of the overall relationship between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, but in particular, of course, the ways in which defense cooperation can be moved forward. Our next segment in the show today is going to be focusing on what Mr. Donald Trump has spoken about with regards to his letter to Iran, in which there is also inclusion of a 2-month deadline and, of course, tough consequences if there is no particular deal. And this is something that has been warned by the president previously as well, that there is going to be a risk of military action if Iran fails to strike a nuclear deal within the 2 months time span that has been provided in the letter. We've seen the Iranian leadership say that it's not going to help, it's going to add even more sanctions, but they're, of course, still assessing the situation and are going to come back with a response with regards to whatever official capacity that they're going to be engaging with. So we're going to, of course, take a closer look at what that means in terms of the possibilities of military action, and then, of course, in the ways that Iran can possibly come to the negotiating table, given the fact that it was the US who backed up previously as well, with Iran complying with the deal 1 year after that as well. So we're going to be taking a closer look at how that is going to affect the relationship, and then, of course, the entire region, and in the ways the possibilities of an escalation and an outright military conflict exists in the region. For this and more, as always, in the studios, I've been joined by senior analyst Farrukh Pitafi and Raja Faisal. And we've also been joined online by Mr. Umer Karim, who's a research fellow at the University of Birmingham. Thank you very much, Umer, for joining us and being a part of the debate. And I'll start with you with what we know so far. Of course, we've had a historic relationship with Saudi Arabia. We have, of course, enjoyed good trade relations with the country as well. And, of course, Pakistan continues to expand that dynamic. But in terms of the possibilities that exist of bolstering defense cooperation even further, what do you see can possibly be the nodes in which this collaboration can exist, given the threat that we know is that is being emanated from the region, particularly coming in from Afghanistan?
I think that this is a very important trip by the Prime Minister. Currently, we know that Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, they have different planks of cooperation, whether it is political, economic, strategic. But given the uncertainty clouding the whole region, and the factor now added up by President Donald Trump's decisions, uh, it the bilateral relationship and its different dimensions have become even more important. Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, they are perhaps the only two countries in the world who have remained partners in security without a formal defense pact. So this shows the proximity between the two sides, both on the institutional level, but also on the level of decision makers and personalities. And as we can see that Afghanistan is clearly now becoming a source of instability for the whole region, whether it is Pakistan or Iran. I think that Pakistan's partners in the Gulf, particularly Saudi Arabia, will be looking towards Pakistan and exchanging notes on how to deal with this situation, and also how to collectively maybe engage with the new administration in the White House to confront and to react to this new reality, which is not suitable for Pakistan, and also perhaps not very likable for Saudi Arabia. And I think there are a lot of different developments which have happened over the last month or two, which have shown that how Gulf and Pakistan, actors in Gulf and Pakistan are approaching this file, and how they will escalate their cooperation and coordination vis-a-vis Afghanistan, but also regional security in general.
Right. And Faisal, I want your perspective on that too, given, of course, that we have discussed the way that we've seen collaboration and support coming in from the Afghan Taliban regime to TTP, and of course, safe havens being provided there as well. But whenever we've spoken about terrorism as a regional threat, the definitions of terrorism and what sort of agreement exists and what sort of involvement countries want to really get into, given the geopolitical understandings that they have with their respective countries, and of course, the economic dynamics in the region as well, is very, very significant. And I want your take on how much these factors will influence our relationship and possibilities of cooperation with Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, obviously, Sana, when we talk about Pakistan's relations with Saudi Arabia, especially in terms of defense, first of all, I would like to highlight this fact that Saudi Arabia is just like a second home for Pakistan and vice versa. And when it comes to safeguarding and when it comes to the aspect of security of Saudi Arabia, it is as dear to Pakistan as its own security. And of course, when we talk about defense cooperation, it spans decades long cooperation, and Saudi Arabia time and again highlights this, that Pakistan is always there when it comes to the security challenges felt by or seen by or faced by Saudi Arabia. And in the current scenario, of course, there are different challenges which are being faced by both of the countries. Of course, when it comes to Pakistan, Pakistan is facing a live threat from emanating from Afghanistan, and of course, it originates from there, it gets facilitated there, it gets financed out there, and then it obviously is a live threat for Pakistan. And of course, Saudi Arabia has deep concerns related to it, and Saudi Arabia knows the needs of Pakistan, and both of the countries, they do have the leverage to, of course, discuss everything related to that as well. And wherever Saudi Arabia's influence is needed, of course, Saudi Arabia is always there and never shies away from that. When it comes to Saudi Arabia itself, of course, we know that in Gulf countries, Saudi Arabia and the other Gulf countries as well, they are facing a threat. Of course, Yemen is a threat for them, and the forces that get sort of support from other countries. Of course, Iran has a large influence to play in Yemen. And when it comes to these kind of threats, and internally as well, of course, ISIS is a phenomenon that has, of course, affected the whole Gulf countries and then Arab countries throughout. And then, of course, ISIS Khorasan is in Afghanistan. So Pakistan has already been fighting against that terrorism. And if there are any threats that might emerge in Saudi Arabia in coming future, then of course them can be dealt with by both of the countries. And when it comes to procurement, of course, Pakistan has excelled in recent times in the different fields of arms. Pakistan has been of course sharing each and everything with Saudi Arabia on that, and whenever it is required and needed by Saudi Arabia, it would always be there. When it comes to research and development, I'm sure that both of the countries, they are deeply cooperating with each other, especially when it comes to universities like National University of Science and Technology and many other universities that are involved in research. There are many students from both of the countries who are collaborating each other's research, and that is very important in terms of defense as well. And when it comes to overall Middle Eastern security challenges, in recent past we have been seeing that there were changes in Syria, and once them changes, they actually changed the sort of political fabric of one country, Syria. that is of course a factor that can play a role. And when it comes to Middle East itself, of course Gaza and Palestine, that is a live issue. And in recent times when we were hearing the echoes from Washington that somehow they believe that all of these Gazans, they should be stripped the right of their natural right of living in Gaza, and they should be sent elsewhere. And of course they have been naming Saudi Arabia as well, that Saudi Arabia should be playing its role to of course inhibit all of these Gazans, or a part of these Gazans in their own country. I think these all aspects, they will be on the table to discuss. And of course when it comes to cooperation between both of the countries, Pakistan is always open to any sort of cooperation when it comes to Saudi Arabia. Like I started with this phrase that Saudi Arabia is just like other home for Pakistan, and when it comes to security of Saudi Arabia, it is as important as our own security.
Right, absolutely. But Farrukh, I also still want to understand the ways in which Saudi Arabia is actually looking at this dynamic as well, because when we talk about Pakistan and of course its fight against terrorism and what it's dealing with in the region, we understand that and we're putting that out in the international community as well. But what sort of stakes does Saudi Arabia have in terms of the fight against terrorism or the regional threat that exists?
Thank you very much, Sana. I think this is a very important question, and I think that you can look at it through two lenses, right? The first one is OIC. OIC, the Islamic organization, right, is important, and Saudi Arabia is a leader of this organization. Any country that calls itself Muslim, especially a country like Afghanistan, where you have a government that actually uses religion to govern people, I think that it has, Saudi Arabia has a lot of hold on everybody who is Muslim and who is into politics. So that should be an important dynamic going forward, because in the end, if you talk about clerics, others, who has got the best ones of all, that is Saudi Arabia. The second one is, of course, because Saudi Arabia itself is busy, thanks to MBS's vision, it is busy reforming the country, especially doing away with the vestiges of any kind of bigotry that might have been there or that might have accidentally spread. At that time, a country like Afghanistan, which essentially becomes a radicalization force, that becomes a problem for Saudi Arabia and the region as well. Regarding Pakistan, of course, Saudi Arabia and Pakistan have worked closely in the past throughout history, throughout their history, and they have supported each other, right? Any threat to Pakistan's security is also a source of concern for Saudi Arabia. Similarly, when Yemen situation was unfolding, so many other challenges that actually were faced by our Saudi brothers. So at that time, Pakistan was there as well. It is a given that the security of Saudi Arabia, the mainland, the country, is also something that is very close to our heart. And every time there was some kind of threat of some kind of confrontation, Pakistan either deployed or vowed to deploy soldiers on Saudi soil because of Makkah, Medina, and of course the royal family and the close relationship they have. So security dynamic is very important. But apart from that, also, as I pointed out, Saudi Arabia is busy reforming its economy too, from an oil dependent or oil exporting country. They want to actually make it big in so many other dynamics as well, may it be technology, may it be tourism and whatnot. So Saudi Arabia is trying to actually reform the economic dynamics. Pakistan can also get a lot out of that, especially because a huge number of Pakistanis are already in Saudi Arabia as labor. One hopes that high paying jobs are also open to Pakistan. So this visit of Prime Minister is comes at a very opportune time, because the dynamics of the world are now changing as well. On one side is automation, AI, whatnot. On the other side is this desire of the previous government. Remember, Biden administration in the US wanted to migrate from oil to solar energy and electrical energy. And now President Donald Trump is also focusing on domestic production. So everything is going to have its own dynamics. It is important that both these countries, which have been close partners, to work together and to actually leapfrog through new dynamics with mutual consensus.
Right. And Umer, I want your perspective also in terms of when we talk about the ways in which we are going to be engaging with the war against terror with regards to India as well. This is, of course, is another dossier that Pakistan has been presenting for quite some time in terms of state-sponsored terrorism and terror financing. But again, we've seen that other interests, especially with regards to OIC countries and even Saudi Arabia, come into play. And so I want your perspective also in terms of when we talk about the potential aspects in which the international community can take a look at this within the region. And then add to that the ways in which we are seeing possibilities of escalation even in Iran, and of course with the genocide continuing in Gaza. There is a lot of regional escalation that possibly exists as well. In that sense, how will Pakistan and Saudi Arabia nexus come around in terms of being important players?
I think this meeting between the Pakistani Prime Minister and Saudi Crown Prince, actually it has become like kind of an annual occurrence. Every Ramadan, Pakistani decision makers they travel to Saudi Arabia and they exchange notes. And it shows the significance of the relationship. And of course, this occurrence only happens with Pakistan. It's not the Indian premier who goes to Saudi Arabia like this and is welcomed at any time of the year. Of course, the Saudi-Indian relationship has progressed to newer heights. It has attained its own relevance and significance. But still, Pakistan or the importance of Pakistan within broader South Asia, because we have to understand that Pakistan, after all, is a direct neighbor of Iran. And whatever Saudi security concerns arise vis-a-vis their northern neighbor, Pakistan, in a manner, becomes party to it. And this is why, at the official platform of OIC, the organization has always been supportive of Pakistan's stance towards Kashmir, and India has always been protesting about it and has always raised this issue on bilateral forums with countries like Saudi Arabia that you need to change this stance from the institutional perspective. And this has not happened. And I think that this shows that still, although the India-Saudi relationship has moved on and it's a factor now, realistically, within the Pakistan-Saudi dynamic, but still it has not reached to such a level where it will alter the nature of Pakistan-Saudi ties. And the second thing is, as you rightly pointed out, that Pakistan is probably the only country where Saudis uh, can blindly trust the decision makers. And although there are certain limitations, every country has those limitations. But when it comes to Pakistan, Pakistan has delivered armed forces for Saudi protection, as Farrukh was also mentioning in the past. And perhaps Pakistan right now is the only country, possibly other than the US, to have actual military forces present within Saudi Arabia. And when I say military forces, it's not just a token presence, but a sizable presence. And this shows the level of trust, the level of bilateral engagement and involvement, and also on a broader security level. Now, Pakistan is contributing towards the capacity enhancement of Saudi forces. And I was looking through different documents about exercises, and now even the Pakistani different sections of Pakistani armed forces, they have their annual trainings and exercises with different attachments of Saudi armed forces. So it's not just at a general armed forces level, but it has this cooperation or engagement has become very specialized. And I guess this all plays into uh, regional security dynamics because a stronger and a more capable Saudi armed forces can contribute towards regional stability and security, especially at a time when now the Israeli premier has openly talked about maybe putting or maybe ethnically cleansing the Palestinians in Gaza or West Bank into Saudi Arabia. So that was quite alarming if from the Saudi perspective that now even Saudi land is being talked in this manner by the Israeli premier, and the dynamics which are now in White House and overall in the world, I guess Saudi Arabia has emerged as a very important political actor and actually a new hub for diplomacy. And in that scenario, the strength of Pakistan-Saudi relationship only further adds on into Pakistan's favor in Pakistan's immediate neighborhood, but also in the broader region as well.
Right. And we're going to be also taking a look at what's happening in terms of Iran. And I mentioned that a little bit also in the beginning. And Faisal, I'll start with you with reference to when we take a look at, of course, our dynamics within the region as well. There are also important elements coming in from Iran, which are, of course, impacting the situation. And now we know that the US president has also written a letter to the Iranian leadership, given a 2-month deadline, and, of course, has talked about military risk that exists if there isn't a deal. And so I want first your perspective in terms of, in light of this, what that means particularly for the way that is going to affect Pakistan, where it's already dealing with a lot of problematic neighbors.
Yeah, Sana, obviously, first of all, when it comes to Pakistan and its neighbors, of course, Pakistan wants to have good relations with all of the neighbors, including India as well. But of course, we have long-standing, a conflict going on with India. That's why we feel them problems. When it comes to, of course, Afghanistan, if today Taliban regime can make sure that their land is not being used against Pakistan for origination of terrorism and facilitation of terrorism and financing of terrorism, then of course Pakistan is all okay with them as well. And when it comes to Iran, of course we know that as long as Iran can deliver to Pakistan in terms of not letting its land being used against Pakistan. In past, we know that people like Kulbhushan Jadavs and all of these people, with the leverage they were having in terms of having a Chabahar, a project going on with both of the countries, they were hand in glove with that. And during that time, of course, we knew that people like Kulbhushan Jadhav, they have been penetrating within Pakistan to facilitate, finance, and of course, give any kind of leverage to the terrorists out there, BLA, BLF, TTP, and these kind of people, they were, of course, getting into Pakistan from the Iranian side. Later on, of course, Iran made sure that it doesn't take place anymore, and that is why we are seeing that Indians are utilizing their influence in Afghanistan and the NDS influence in Afghanistan, the previous NDS, and they are utilizing that and having good relations with ISIS Khorasan, and that's how they are extending the facilitations in recent times. But overall, we know that last year we had a day when, of course, the Iranians, they, bombarded a place within the borders of Pakistan where they believed that there were, some terrorists or whoever of BLF who were active within Iran. But in response, of course, Pakistan saw that there was nothing there, and there were, a couple of families living there. They were the victims, and Pakistan actually reciprocated in terms that Pakistan believed that our sovereignty, our territorial integrity was hinged, and of course we had to reciprocate. And we Pakistan conducted air raid in Sarawan, and that was based on the IBO. It was intelligence based operation, and what happened very next day to that, it was good of Iran that they issued a statement in which they said that none of their citizens, the Iranian citizens, were of course missing or the victims of that attack. It shows that all of the people of BLA, they were the targets, and that IBO was conducted at its fullest of precision. When it comes to this particular aspect, I mean, if I look at this deal, the word deal, and asking Iran to sit and talk with them with an ultimatum of 2 months, that if you don't come to conclusion with us, then we'll do this, we'll do that. I think this would go nowhere, because the kind of people Iranians are, I believe, if they go for saying yes to the US in terms that we accept this, accept that, then they would be losing their stance in the region. They will be losing their stance in front of their own people, and to their own people, they have always portrayed that they have the ultimate power, they have the ultimate weaponry as well to counter any kind of threats, be it verbal threat or be it kinetic threat to their country. And of course, when it comes to this kind of verbal threat, I think this is an ultimatum from the Americans that you have 2 months, sit with us, get to conclusion. If you don't, then of course we are coming for you. But overall, of course, if you are forcing upon somebody to sit with you and have a conclusion that is in accordance to the desires of them, that I don't see that happening. And I believe after 2 months there will be a situation where Pakistan has to be cautious about it as well, because Iran is a neighboring country to Pakistan. Of course, Pakistan doesn't want another disrupted country on its southwestern border. And when it comes to, of course, Iran having them kind of troubles in their own country, where of course there is a war, after 2 months, if there is a war, then it would be of course consequences for Pakistan as well, in terms that it would be having another fragile border on our southwestern side. So in this whole scenario, I think we should sit back and relax for now, but we should be cautious enough for whatever the outcome of this whole talk is. And if it is a positive talk, we should welcome it. If it is not, then we should be, of course, cautious about it.
Right. And Farrukh, I want your perspective on that, because we've seen these stances coming in from the US president, and of course there's a lot of discussion around the kind of position he's holding on different matters. This letter, of course, has a deadline that's being called very tough, and is very clear in terms of the military risk that it holds. And so I want your take in terms of the very real possibility of that actually happening. Do you think that that's something that Mr. Trump can actually go ahead with? And what is the possibility of Iran and the US not being able to actually strike that deal within 2 months that they haven't been able to do so far?
Right, Sana, thank you very much. I think that there are 2 or 3, actually 3 dynamics to unpack here.
Yeah.
First of all, you have to understand America-Iran relationship, which is very complicated, and it is interestingly complicated. Remember that right now, last time also when President Trump was in power, at that time also both countries were at the loggerheads, and there was a time when we thought that there is going to be some kind of physical clash. Remember, the plane went down in Tehran, and in the end we found out that it was friendly fire. But apart from that, there is an interesting history since Obama's time. During President Obama, Hillary Clinton was the Secretary of State, and at that time she brought in Waleed Nasser, the author of Shia Revival, right? And he kept on advising that whatever has happened since the invasion of Iraq, and you know that it used to be a pivotal state, and because of collapse of that country, there was bedlam because Shia Sunni divide was more pronounced. At that time, there was an encouragement of expansion of Iran's influence in most countries, and we saw then that the Arab Spring happened. This was happening under the watch of the US of A, and that was happening during President Obama's time. After that, of course, when Israel got averted, and of course the Arab countries also raised red flags. After that, there was some kind of backtracking, but that continued for quite some time, and that dynamic has continued until the fall of Assad regime. So one has to look at that history. That means that while they might actually pose as frenemies, but they have been actually feeding into each other's loop as well. Similarly, when you talk about Israel and Iran's animosity, it is very pronounced. But the way both actually attacked each other recently, that would show some kind of forethought, right? Not exactly that kind of attack or invasion or try of taking over a country. That didn't happen. I mean, they sent their drones, I'm talking about Iran, and it took forever to actually reach there. Similarly, missiles and all. Everybody knew that they are going to be down before they reach there. So there is this interesting dynamic. Then along comes Donald Trump, who is actually very friendly with both the Arab countries and with Israel as well. And then we see something that is quite intriguing that happens. He repeatedly says that Iranian people are beautiful people, and I can attest to that, Sana. Whosoever I've met from Iran has been actually, wisdom has been oozing out of them. So they have been very, very good people. But the fact is that the regime or the government that is there, it has two divisions within it. Of course, one is the democratic part, which keeps on changing. But on the other side, when you talk about the guards and all, they are very radical. The flank which seems to be responsible for that missile attack within Pakistan's boundary as well. So when you are trigger happy, then there is a crisis. I think that Donald Trump in his book has written about Art of Deal, that he actually sets very high target, and then he keeps on pushing and pushing and pushing while maintaining lowest expectation, because even if you have to compromise, there is still room to get whatever he wants. So in the end, I think it is good time that Iran, of course, there is going to be this muscular posturing from both sides. But in the end, I'm sure that even as we speak, because remember that when Donald Trump was about to take oath of office, before that, Elon Musk met with Iranian ambassador. So with that kind of dynamic, one hopes that eventually there will be some kind of dialogue, and in the end, it is going to return some kind of deal. Of course, it is not going to be like JCPOA, because A, the nuclear progress might have gone beyond its threshold. On the other side, of course, Donald Trump is no Obama, he is no Biden. He actually rolls with his own dynamics, and we still have to wait and see what actually becomes of it.
And Umer, I want your perspective on that as well, and also add to that, of course, while we talk about what the US can or cannot do and what Mr. Trump is really looking at, whether or not he's out of his depth when he speaks, but I want your take also on the way that Iran is going to be taking a look at this. There was, of course, the 2015 deal, which they stayed with even after US backed out for about a year, and the leadership in Iran has said that there will just be more sanctions. What can be offered as part of this deal potentially that can possibly be something that Iran can agree with, and that can bring us to this deal?
So, as compared to the last JCPO deal, or the last time when Iran and US under President Donald Trump were in crosshairs, today there are some changes which might produce relatively different results in case of this scenario unfolding. One, that Iran's regional military muscle has been relatively weakened. it doesn't, its proxies within the Levant, Hezbollah, Hamas, and the Assad regime, they are pretty much not as significant. Assad regime is gone. The Iraqi militias, they are also uh, acting carefully, treading carefully. The other thing which is very interesting also is that President Trump has a very good relationship with President Putin in Russia. So Iran, which had sort of become a strategic partner of Russia, had been supplying drones to Russian military uh, offensive in Ukraine. Uh, Iran, I would think that Russia would not be as willing a partner to Iran as it might had been before in case of an escalation. And of course, the Gulf countries' relationship with Russia will also check this out. The other thing is that last time when Iran and US came close to this conflict, it didn't happen. And this was actually a lesson for the Gulf countries that you cannot actually depend upon the US to completely ensure your own security, because at the end of the day, the US will only think about its own strategic interest. And particularly under the Trump regime, there is another kind of instinct which shies away from any long-term uh, or any long offensive military engagement. And if they had to engage with Iran, then that can be very long-term. So I guess that that also shows that this sort of muscle showing right now, which we see from the US, it would eventually lead to some sort of an engagement between the two sides. And I guess right now the Gulf states, Saudi Arabia, UAE, Oman, all of them have a very relatively positive relationship with Iran, and they also want this America-Iran confrontation to not happen. And they would be doing all they can to become a bridge between the two sides. And from an Iranian regime perspective, I think what both Faisal and Farrukh were saying, regime security is paramount. And from a Donald Trump perspective, if they can deliver something on the nuclear front, then Donald Trump's America doesn't really care about who is in charge in Iran or whatsoever in any other country. They just want Iran to give them something which then Donald Trump can show to the whole world that okay, we reigned in Iran. And I guess these are the modalities where this engagement will happen. And the Iranians also understand that actually perhaps their biggest threat or their biggest enemy right now in the region is Israel. And if anyone can rein in Israel, or if a deal with any one actor can put Israel on the back foot, it's the U.S. and its Trump administration. So there are a lot of incentives for all these actors involved to reach out a deal. Iran, perhaps, if I would say, I think that it's still kind of it's considered a nuclear threshold state. And what I understand that President Trump's negotiators would want it to take a step back from that. Whether Iran will agree or not, it will depend upon solely on what sort of incentives they are ready to give to Iran in this regard. And I guess that if there is some relaxation with regards to sanctions, then this is good enough incentive for the Iranian regime to consider. And it will be very important, actually, that what role can the Gulf states, particularly Saudi Arabia, can play in this regard, because right now there is a personal dynamic into all of this as well, which is the Saudis have a very good personal relationship with the President Donald Trump and his son-in-law Jared Kushner. And can they actually be able to convince both of them that it's not in their and also in the Gulf interest to actually start a conflict with Iran?
Right.
Yes,
Thank you
Sana.
very much, Umer, for joining us and
Sana,
being a part of the discussion. Yes.
In Umer's
Sure.
presence, I wanted to say something. I think he has highlighted an excellent point related to Putin's role. When we talk about Putin's role, of course, we should be considering the aspect of Ukraine crisis as well. As we saw that Donald Trump, he's been, portraying as if he can mediate between both of them. So I'm pretty much sure that he would be seeking the same from President Putin as well when it comes to Iran. So in this whole scenario, we might see that if Donald Trump is playing role for Ukrainian crisis, then at the same time President Putin can play a very positive role in terms of Iranian crisis as well. So in this whole equation, we will see both of the leaders, Donald Trump as well as President Putin, they would be playing an important role.
Right. Farrukh, anything you'd like to add?
Right. When you talk about the importance of any kind of negotiations, I think it is a given. Remember that the inflation in Iran is sky high. And the people of Iran have been suffering for over 2 generations now. So much so that now, like we have currency notes of 100 rupee bill or 1000 rupee bill, they have notes for billions, not billions, millions worth of their local currency. So what we have to understand is that it will be great if these sanctions can be removed. But whether that is possible at this moment and how far President Putin will go or try to leverage his position is still up in the air. We don't know what exactly is going to happen, because in Ukraine also it doesn't seem to be playing the ball the way everybody was expecting.
Right. Thank you, Farrukh. Thank you, Faisal, for joining us in the debate. That's all we have time for. We'll now see you Monday.